The enduring legacy of Toni Morrison. Themes, style, and major works explained. Hello and welcome to the discourse. Toni Morrison stands as a monumental figure in the landscape of American and post-colonial literature. Her work, while centered on the specific experiences of black people in America, resonates deeply with the global themes of reclaiming identity, confronting a painful history, and challenging oppressive power structures. As an African American writer, she was part of a tradition dedicated to giving voice to the complex realities of black life. African American writers are authors primarily of African descent whose work is fundamentally shaped by the historical and cultural experiences of black people in the United States, including the legacies of slavery, segregation, migration, and the ongoing struggle for civil rights and identity. A Nobel Laureate's vision. In 1993, Toni Morrison was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature, a historic achievement that made her the first African American woman to receive this honor. The Swedish Academy praised her as a writer who, in novels characterized by visionary force and poetic import, gives life to an essential aspect of American reality. This recognition cemented her status as a world-class author whose stories focused on black communities were in fact essential narratives about humanity itself, a distinct literary style and movement. Morrison's literary style is renowned for its poetic and often lyrical quality. She masterfully employed techniques such as non-linear narrative where stories unfold out of chronological order, reflecting how memory and trauma operate. Her prose is rich with magical realism, blending the supernatural with the everyday to explore the inner lives of her characters. She also used multiple perspectives, allowing different characters to tell the same story from their own viewpoints, creating a complex and layered truth. While her work is unique, it is often associated with the Black arts movement, which championed artistic expression rooted in black culture and experience. Morrison worked as an editor at Random House, where she actively supported and published a new generation of African American writers, ensuring their stories reached a wide audience. Her own writing was a form of cultural preservation, aiming to articulate what she called an unspeakable thing unspoken, the silenced histories of her people. Important works and characters. Toni Morrison's novels are not merely stories. They are intricate tapestries woven from the threads of memory, trauma, community, and the relentless search for identity. Her body of work forms a powerful and unflinching chronicle of the African American experience, each book building upon the last to create a profound literary legacy. The Heartbreaking Foundation, The Bluest Eye, published in 1970. Morrison's first novel, The Bluest Eye, is a brutal and poetic exploration of internalized racism and the destruction of self-worth. Set in 1941 Ohio, the story centers on Pecola Breedlove, a young black girl who believes she is ugly and unlovable. She internalizes the white, middle-class American standards of beauty broadcast by everyone around her, from the smiling white face on the Shirley Temple mug to the admiration her lighter-skinned classmates receive. Her desperate prayer is for blue eyes, believing that this physical transformation would finally make her accepted and loved. The novel is narrated partially by Claudia McTeer, a young girl who, unlike Pecola, has not yet learned to hate her own blackness. Claudia's voice provides a stark contrast, one of resistance and confusion in the face of a world that devalues her. Pecola's life is a slow-motion tragedy, marked by parental abuse, community rejection, and an ultimate shattering act of violence from her own father, Pecola Breedlove. Coley is a complex character, a man so broken by his own history of abandonment and racial humiliation that his love becomes destructive. The novel does not offer easy answers, but instead presents a searing indictment of a society that teaches its most vulnerable members to despise themselves. Pecola's eventual descent into madness, where she believes she has received her blue eyes, is one of the most heartbreaking conclusions in literature, highlighting the human cost of racial self-loathing. Friendship and Female Identity, Sula, published in 1973. In Sula, Morrison shifts her focus to the complexities of female friendship and the meaning of good and evil within a community. The novel follows the lifelong bond between Nell Wright and Sula Peace, two girls from the bottom, a black neighborhood in Ohio. Nell is rooted in convention, order, and the expectations of her community. Sula is her opposite, wild, unpredictable, and fiercely independent, refusing to be defined by anyone. Their friendship represents a wholeness, two halves of a single person. The central, tragic event that fractures their bond is the accidental drowning of a young boy, Chicken Little, which they witness together and keep as a terrible secret. Their paths diverge as adults. Nell marries and settles into the life of the community, while Sula leaves for a decade, returning as a disruptive force. The town sees Sula as the embodiment of evil, using her actions, particularly her affairs with their husbands, as a reason to strengthen their own moral codes. Yet, Morrison challenges this simple judgment. Sula's defiance is also a form of radical freedom. Her most famous declaration, "I don't want to make somebody else, I want to make myself," is a powerful statement of self-creation. When Sula dies, the town loses its necessary scapegoat and the community begins to fray. The novel forces the reader to question who the true villain is, the woman who lives for herself or the community that needs an outsider to define its own goodness. The Epic Quest for Heritage, Song of Solomon, 1977. This novel marked a turning point in Morrison's career, bringing her national acclaim. Song of Solomon is an epic, multi-generational saga that follows the journey of Macon Milkman Dead III, a young man born into the comfort and spiritual emptiness of his father's middle-class wealth. Milkman begins the story as selfish and alienated, unaware of his family's past. His journey of self-discovery is ignited by his eccentric aunt, Pilate Dead, a bootlegger who is a figure of profound moral strength and mystical connection to tradition. Pilate, who has no navel, symbolically exists outside of conventional lineage and represents a more primal, spiritual way of being. She keeps a green sack she believes contains her father's bones and sings a haunting song about a character named Solomon. Milkman's quest to find a lost bag of gold transforms into a pilgrimage to the American South to uncover his family's history. There, he pieces together the fragments of the past, discovering that the Solomon from Pilate's song was his great-grandfather, an enslaved man who, according to legend, flew back to Africa to escape bondage. This myth of the flying African becomes the novel's central metaphor for the ultimate escape from oppression and the reclamation of a lost cultural identity. Milkman's journey is not just about finding gold, but about finding himself by connecting to his ancestors. The novel culminates in a moment of transcendent understanding and liberation, as Milkman finally understands the weight and the wings of his inheritance. Love and Haunted History, Beloved, 1987. Widely considered her masterpiece, Beloved won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction and is a ghost story in the most literal and figurative sense. Based on the true story of Margaret Garner, the novel tells the story of Seth, a woman who escaped from Kentucky plantation called Sweet Home to Ohio. 18 years after her escape, she is still not free, held prisoner by the memories of the trauma she endured. Her home is haunted by the angry, destructive spirit of her deceased baby daughter, whose tombstone bears only the word beloved. Seth had killed this child with a handsaw rather than allow her to be taken back into slavery, an act she describes as choosing to put my babies where they would be safe. The ghost is driven out by the arrival of Paul D., another survivor from Sweet Home, who brings with him the possibility of a future and a shared love. However, the past returns in a more tangible form when a mysterious, beautiful young woman appears, calling herself Beloved. She is emotionally needy, speaks in a fragmented voice, and has knowledge of Seth's past. Beloved embodies the physical and spiritual scars of slavery. She is the rememory, a term Morrison coins for the way painful past events remain alive in the present, of the mother's unspeakable act and the 60 million and more victims of the Middle Passage. The novel is a difficult, painful, and ultimate healing exploration of how to love in the aftermath of a system that defined you as property. It argues that to move forward, one must first confront the ghost of the past, no matter how painful that confrontation may be. The later works and legacy. Morrison's later novels continued her ambitious project. Jazz, published in 1992, set during the Harlem Renaissance, uses the improvisational, unpredictable nature of jazz music as its narrative structure to tell a story of love, violence, and betrayal. Paradise, published in 1997, concludes her loose trilogy on love by examining the conflict within an all-black town and its violent attack on a group of women living in a convent on its outskirts, exploring themes of purity, exclusion, and salvation. Her final novel, A Mercy, published in 2008, takes readers back to the late 17th century, a time before race-based slavery was fully codified. Through the interconnected lives of women, including the resilient Florence, the pragmatic Lena, the wild Sorrow, and their mistress Rebecca, Morrison dismantles the origins of American racial hierarchy, showing a moment when bonds of gender and servitude were as powerful as those of race. Through this remarkable collection of work, Toni Morrison gave voice to the silenced, painted the horrors of history with unflinching honesty, and celebrated the profound resilience, complexity, and beauty of Black American life. Her novels are essential reading not just for literature students but for anyone seeking to understand the deep, often troubled, but always vital heart of the American story. Critical essays on race and literature. Beyond her fiction, Morrison was a formidable critical thinker. In her collection of essays, Playing in the Dark, Whiteness and the Literary Imagination, published in 1992, she revolutionized literary criticism. She argued that the figure of the Africanist person, the black character, has always been a crucial presence in American literature, often used as a foil to define whiteness and freedom. She introduced the concept of the American Africanism, describing how a stereotyped image of blackness was used by white writers to explore themes of morality, evil, and desire without having to humanize black people themselves. This work forced the re-examination of the entire American literary canon. Through her profound novels and incisive criticism, Toni Morrison created an indelible legacy. She gave voice to the silenced, painted the horrors of history with unflinching honesty, and celebrated the resilience and richness of Black American life, securing her place as one of the most important writers of the modern era. So this is it for today. We will continue to discuss the post-colonial literature. Please stay connected with the discourse. Thanks and regards.